Assalamu alaikum students, welcome to the unit 2, lecture 2, part B1. Hope you have gone through the story, you have read the story, you have learned the story, and you have also gone through the answer questions. And I told you in the previous lecture that write down the answers of the questions in the we can say in the question answers of the book and send it to me for further checking its grammar and spelling mistakes. In today's lecture, as we have discussed students' learning outcomes, we are going to discuss elements of the story and also discuss basic 6 elements. If we talk about the introduction of the elements of the story, before going to discuss what a story is, I would like to say a few lines about the importance of a story. Stories are very important and it has been important in the past, it will be important in the future because a story has earned its place as the most important tradition a human possesses. Like the most important reasons for these being that every story contains a lesson to instruct the audience, or story teach us to love, to forgive others, to be just, and to strive for better than we have. And we also know that we can say our lives real life we can say real lives are full of history. There are fictional stories in the books in the form of the novels, and there are many other stories around the world in many languages. Now a basic question that about in this part, that is introduction of the story, is what is a story? A narrative or story is an account of a series of related events, experience, or the like, whether true or fictitious. This story, the word derives from the Latin word, it is verb narrare, and it means to tell. So this is the basic, we can say, definition of the story, that it is account of, we can say, series of events. And what is the difference, or what is, we can say, the distinguishing part of this storytelling and novel, or we can say long stories? A short story is defined in a way that can be read in one setting. Like if you are reading a short story, you could read it in one setting. Like you could sit or you could take almost 5 to 20 or 30 minutes, and you could read whole the story. On the other hand, novels, long stories, they takes almost 2 days, 3 days, 1 month, 1 week. They are very long stories. So today we are going to discuss elements of the story, and we are going to divide elements of story into lecture, because we are going to discuss elements, and we are also going to discuss it with reference to the story the caliph and the gardener. Therefore this lecture will be divided further in 2 parts. If you talk about the elements of story, the first element is character or characters. There is not a single story in the world which does not have a character. So characters or character is a very important element in every story. A character could be a person or sometimes even an animal who takes part in the actions of a short story or other literary work. Writers use characters to perform the actions and speak the dialogues of the story. Sometimes we can say sometimes it happens when the characters talk with each other. Their dialogues, their conversation takes the story forward. There are writers who writes stories in which dialogues are important. There are writers who narrate himself and dialogues are not important. So it can be it depends upon the style, the way the writer or the author or the storyteller writes a story. So the dialogues or the characters, they move a story's plot forward. If we talk about the characterization, which is a method of putting character in the story, it is further divided into direct characterization and indirect characterization. Once again, I want to say, what is characterization? Characterization is the tool of creating, the tool of representing, the tool of bringing characters in the story. It depends on the author how he brings, how he introduces the characters in the story. Uh, it can be characterized direct way, it can be characterized in indirect way. What is direct characterization? If we talk about direct characterization, it is the way of putting characters in the story in which the author, the storyteller, directly uses words such as adjectives to depict the personality, the traits, or the characteristics of a certain characters in the story. On the other hand, indirect characterization refers to the way of putting characters in the story in which the author does not use direct words or direct adjectives. Rather, he uses indirect method to bring forward the personality of a character. Then, in indirect characterization, the author could use the dialogues of the character. How this, when they speak from their dialogues, we come to know how the person is. He is good or bad. Is he against evil or against goodness? All of them can be expected. On the other hand, if we talk about characters, so these types of character, it is further divided into two main category, that is round character and flat character. Round character is that character whose personality, whose characteristics, whose traits changes from beginning of the story till the end of the story. For example, if a character is bad in the beginning of the story and he is going to become good in the end of the story, so that type of character is round character. On the other hand, if a character or characters are good in the beginning and they are also good at the end, if they are bad in the beginning and they are also in the same way in the end, so that type of characters are known as flat characters. If we talk about characters, types of characterization with reference to the story we have read, the caliph and the gardener, so we come to the conclusion that the author has used indirect characterization. It is the dialogues of the characters which depict how the persons, how the characters of the stories are. For instance, we come to know about the poor man or the gardener through his words, that he is a clever, he is a honest, he is hardworking. On the other hand, we come to know about the caliph, that he does not know about the people around them who are poor, who does not have food, who does not have uh, clothes to wear. So it is indirect characterization. On the other hand, if we talk about types of characters, the whole, I mean all the characters in the caliph and the gardener are flat characters. Flat characters. They are the same in the beginning and they are the same in the end of the story. Moving forward to the second elements of a story, it is setting. What is setting? The setting of a story is the time and place in which it happens. Authors often use description of landscape, scenery, buildings, seasons, or weather to provide a strong sense of setting. Setting helps us to understand the story. Setting helps us to know or to get maximum meaning from the story. For instance, if the story is set in night, it has another meaning. If the story is set at daytime, it has another meaning. If the story is set in a time that it is raining, so it has another, we can say, meaning. It has another interpretations. If a story is set, we can say, in a winter or in a spring or in a summer or any we can say season, so it has its impact on the story. Those setting, those particular time, those particular place helps us to interpret, to take out maximum meaning from the story. So what happens that authors often use description of the landscape, scenery, buildings, seasons, weather to provide a strong sense of setting. The basic question is asked in setting is where and when is the story set. So if we, this is the basic question. Setting also represents both the physical location but also the time, past, present, or future, and the social and the cultural conditions in which the characters exist. It means that if a story is set in Pakistan, we most probably assume that the characters might be Muslim, because majority of the Pakistanis are Muslims. If we talk about, if the story is set in America, we assume that the characters in the story could be Christian, they could be Jewish, they could be atheist, because majority of the people in the America, they are from other religion. So it really helps. Now if you talk about the setting of the story, the caliph and the gardener, that we have recently read, we have discussed, so we come to the conclusion that its setting is we can say around the palace of a caliph, and it is also we can say around and it also connects with people who are living near Black Mountains, and they are in countryside while the palace could be in the city side. So it is the setting of the story, and we also come to the conclusion that it is summer when the merchant says that it is very hot and he leaps into the water to swim. So it shows that the weather is hot and he wants to cool himself. So this is the basic we can say setting part that we have got from the story. Moving forward into the third element, that is plot. A plot is a series of events and characters action that relate to the central conflict. Now, a very basic question that we have to answer, we have to consider is, what is the difference between plot and story? Story is also, we can say, combination of events. Plot is also a combination of events. So what is the difference between them? Like here it is written, a plot is a series of events. The basic definition is that a plot is series of important events. Those events are that much important. If we take one element one event out of those events, the whole story will collapse. For instance, if we talk about a building is a story, so the pillar of the building is the plot. If we take the, we can say, pillar of a building, the whole building will collapse. So plot is very important in the story. If I discuss this plot and story through the example, the king died and the queen died is is a plot. Now what could be the story of these, that the king died and the queen died? The king died and the queen died of grief. It is the story. Now king died is an important event and the queen died in sequence. It is plot, very important we can say events. We cannot take any of them. On the other hand, if we talk about its story can be written around many pages. Like there was a king, he was happy, he has, we can say, a big country to rule upon. He had certain friends, anything. One day what happens is that he becomes ill, and with the passage of time his illness cannot be cured, so he dies. And when the queen we can say when the queen found that the king has died, she becomes lonely, she also becomes we can say ill. So this is the whole story that I'm going to narrate. But the plot is the king died and the queen died. This is the basic difference between plot and a story. So the events that happen in a story are called the plot. In a plot, you typically find. Now, in these we can say slides, I have represented. I have brought forward further. We can say elements of plot. It is introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. What is introduction? Introduction is the basic we can say part of the plot in which the writer introduce the characters. It is called introduction. We will also discuss these elements with reference to the caliph and the gardener. In the caliph and the gardener, the introduction is the part in which we come to the conclusion. We find that there is a caliph and there is also a merchant, and with the passage of time there is an eagle. So these are, we can say, characters that we come in contact with. It is introduction. What is rising action? Rising action in any story, in any plot, is the part of the story in which the conflict rises, in which the problems comes forward. If you talk about the caliph and the gardener, so the rising action in the caliph and the gardener is when the eagle takes away all money of the merchant because it thinks that it could be some food to eat. So what happens that the merchant who has we can say just earned money from his pearls and other stones, he is now bankrupt. He has nothing to he has nothing to spend or to go with in his home. So it is the rising action. The conflict is that the merchant has come across a problem. What is climax? Climax is the very important, we can say, element of the plot. It is the peak of the conflict. It is a point in which we ask ourselves what will happen now, what will happen. So if you talk about the caliph and the gardener, the climax is the part of the story in which the king summoned the gardener, the old person, and when he asked that if you could find something that we have lost, what will you happen? At that time, we are going to ask about from ourselves that what will be his answer. Will he put it forward? Will he show it, or will he conceal the very money? If what will the king do? Well, what will the caliph do? Will he send him to the prison, or will he give him rewards? This is the main climax. Falling action is the start of problem solution, which was raised in the beginning. In the caliph and the gardener, the falling action is that the merchant comes to see that his money, or the bag of the money, was with gardener, and the gardener narrates how he spent 10 cents of the golds. So it is the falling action that yes, the money is not lost, it is with some person who is present. Resolution is the final, we can say, part of the story, in which the storyteller resolves the we can say story. So what is the resolution of this story? The resolution of this story is a happy ending. It is happy ending in a way that the caliph is also satisfied because he has solved the problem of the merchant. The merchant has also got his money, and the gardener, who has spent 10 gold coins from those money, he has been rewarded further 10 gold pieces, and also his debts are paid by the caliph. This is the happy ending. Everyone is happy. So it is the resolution. So this was the third element, plot. Now there are further elements in which we will going to discuss theme, we are going to discuss point of view, we are going to discuss conflict. Since our lecture should not exceed 15 minutes or 14 minutes, so therefore I will discuss further three elements of the story with reference to the story the caliph and the gardener in lecture 2 part B, B2 part B, and second part of part B. Thank you so much for listening. I expect that you have understood these three elements that I have recently discussed. Thank you so much for listening.